over substance. Their laughter was loud, sharp, and frequent, punctuating stories of Tulum vacations and bidding wars over $4,200 Chanel bags. Hayes sat at the opposite end of the table, an island of quiet composure. He wore his standard off-duty uniform, a crisp $75 J.Crew button-down, and his reliable $89 Timex watch. He'd nursed the same $18 glass of Glenlivet for the past hour, a stark contrast to the parade of $25 cocktails and $150 bottles of Cabernet Sauvignon that had flowed freely to the other end of the table. He was not part of the conversation. He was the audience, the silent benefactor whose presence legitimized the entire performance. He knew his role. He was the stable, successful husband, the good man, the provider. Alva loved casting him in this role, especially in front of her friends. It was a role he had grown to despise. He had no idea just how much tonight's performance would cost him, but a cold knot was already tightening in his stomach. He knew the third act was coming. It always did. He could feel the gazes of Alva's friends flicker toward him occasionally. They weren't looks of inclusion, but of assessment. They were measuring him, confirming his value in the ecosystem Alva had built. There was Brianna in a $1,200 silk dress who worked in PR and curated her life for Instagram. There was Chloe, whose husband owned 3 car dealerships, dripping in $15,000 worth of David Yurman jewelry. They saw Hayes not as a person, but as a function, the financial engine that powered Alva's lifestyle. His solid, dependable career at a Fortune 500 company was the bedrock upon which she built her world of brunches, boutique fitness classes, and weekend getaways. What they didn't see, what no one saw, was the slow, grinding erosion of his spirit, the 1,000 tiny cuts inflicted by a marriage that had become a series of transactional tests. He felt the vibration of his phone in his pocket and knew, without looking, that it was a low-balance alert from his personal checking account. He'd transferred $500 to their joint account that morning to cover the mortgage payment on their $450,000 Bayview bungalow, a house he loved more than any place on earth. The alert meant the account was now hovering around $100. It was a familiar, uncomfortable feeling. The crescendo of laughter at Alva's end of the table died down. A theatrical silence fell. This was it. The cue. The waiter, a young man with a professionally neutral expression, approached the table with a leather billfold. He placed it discreetly in the center of the table, an equal distance from everyone. But it was not for everyone. It was for Alva. She let it sit there for a full minute, building the tension. She then picked it up, her long, manicured fingers tracing the embossed logo of the restaurant. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. She slid it down the polished surface of the table. It glided silently, a dark ship sailing across a sea of mahogany until it came to a gentle stop right in front of Hayes's water glass. He looked at the billfold, then at her. Her eyes were wide, a perfect performance of vulnerability and expectation. Her friends were all watching, their smiles frozen, their bodies leaned in. The entire restaurant seemed to fade into a blur. It was 8:47 p.m. "Prove you love me," Alva said, her voice just loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. It was a whisper that carried the weight of a command. Pay the tab. Have you ever been in a situation where you realized your love was being treated like a commodity? Something to be proven with a price tag? It's a moment that changes everything. And for Hayes, this was that moment. But what Alva and her friends didn't know was that this wasn't the first test. It was just the last one he was willing to take. Their life, on the surface, was the picture of upper-middle-class black success in Milwaukee. The Bayview bungalow, which they'd bought 3 years ago for $450,000, was their masterpiece. It was a classic 1920s brick home on a quiet, tree-lined street. Hayes loved the house. He loved the original hardwood floors. He'd painstakingly refinished himself over 3 weekends, using $300 worth of materials from Home Depot. He loved the small garden in the backyard, where he grew tomatoes and basil, the soil turned with a $40 shovel and his own sweat. On Saturday mornings, he'd be up at 7 a.m., brewing a pot of $14 Collectivo coffee, the smell filling the small, sunlit kitchen. The house felt real, solid, a testament to steady work and quiet love. It was his sanctuary. Alva saw the house differently. For her, it was a backdrop. It was a stage for the life she wanted to project. The refinished floors were less about craftsmanship and more about a rustic chic aesthetic for her Instagram stories. The garden was a charming accessory she'd point out to guests before serving a salad made with store-bought lettuce. Their domestic normalcy was a carefully curated facade, and every detail had a price. The sofa in the living room, a piece Hayes found impractical, but which Alva insisted was perfect, was a $6,000 piece from Restoration Hardware. The abstract painting above it, which Hayes thought looked like a chaotic mess, had cost $3,500 from a gallery in the 3rd Ward. Their wedding photos were displayed in heavy, ornate silver frames that cost $250 each. Hayes's contributions were less visible but more fundamental. He was the one who managed the budget, who set up the automatic bill payments, who monitored their joint savings account, a fund that never seemed to grow, no matter how much he contributed from his $128,000 salary. Alva, who worked part-time as a social media consultant for local boutiques, contributed erratically to their finances. Her income, roughly $30,000 a year, mostly went to what she called business expenses: her wardrobe, her lunches, her white BMW 3 Series, a $43,000 car with a monthly payment that made Hayes's stomach clench. His own car was a 2012 Toyota Camry with 187,000 miles on it, paid off years ago. He was fine with it. It was reliable. It got him to his office in the gleaming glass Northwestern Mutual Tower downtown and back home again. That was all he needed. The Prove You Love Me tests had started small, almost playfully. The first time was about a year into their marriage. They were at a street festival in Wauwatosa, the suburb where Alva grew up and where most of her friends still lived. It was a world away from Bayview's unpretentious, artsy vibe. Wauwatosa was all manicured lawns and high-end